Hey, deserving listeners, Love is Blind. Let's check it out and see what happens.
You. You're gonna get a little close to me. I need you to stay over there, please.
Sorry.
Joe, you can come closer to me, though.
Go, put him over there.
Dude, that's your 19th guac, dude. How many guacs are you gonna eat today?
20.
I think he might love Joe more than me.
Hey.
Yeah, I suppose that's what we're supposed to be gathering from this awkwardness, that Joe and Jordan are really into each other. Who knows? But there could be some of that. You know, there's bisexuality, and there's closeted, people. But I don't see any reason to think that. I think that it's that Jordan and Joe are a little. One, they're goofy. Two, I think they're a little socially nervous, and when some people are that way, they start to just say things to try to be funny or to gain acceptance or something. Or Joe is feeling some kind of way about Madison. There's obviously a lot of alcohol involved. They could be significantly intoxicated right now. I don't see slurring of words, not that that would necessarily be an indicator, but, so I think at the very least, the partners are starting to see their partners in how they deal with situations like this. So I think that I have even more reason to believe that Madison and Joe are not going to work, but who knows? Jordan and Megan, I guess it is a contrast that Jordan and Megan are managing. Jordan and Joe are being equally goofy about nipples and stuff. Although I will say Joe is really pursuing Jordan, but I would assume, given the context, that Joe is nervous and he's just looking for a compatriot in this landscape of, because Annie just turned to him and she's like, you need to move away from me. You're that annoying to me. At the very least, what I think we can observe in terms of strength of relationship or love connection, that Megan and Jordan are still very close to each other, and Megan is like still commenting on how kind of goofy it is, what's happening, whereas Madison had left Joe's side a long time ago. And I guess it is notable that Joe isn't realizing what's happening and doesn't go to Madison and just kind of chill out, have a cup of coffee, just sit down with her and bond something.
Places come for me eventually.
Tony, shut the fuck up. I'm just kidding. I would never fuck.
Am I spelling out over here? Is that what it is?
Dude, Anton's the most handsome Russian I've ever seen.
I would have not at all pegged Anton as a
You're not gonna peg Anton? I hope not. Holy shit.
That's I mean, it's consistent, just the goofiness of it. I'm not going to throw Anton in this crowd. I guess it's mainly Joe and Jordan, but Nick has a different kind of awkwardness. Edmund has a different kind of, I wouldn't call it awkward. I would say Edmund is just kind of spontaneous in a refreshing way, I think. Anton, we just haven't seen, they're calling him Tony, but I think he likes to go by Anton. I think he might have even said that in the pods, that he would say Tony because he worried that people wouldn't be able to remember that name or pronounce it or something. We know that people do that sometimes. Anyway, so Joe is talking even more about being attracted, or he's commenting more on the attractiveness or bodies, or Joe is just, and so I'll talk, I guess, I don't know if this is what's happening, but it's possible that due to toxic masculinity that all men in at least contemporary mainstream society are raised in, like myself, that one of the pressures that is really hammered into us is that you can't have feelings, you can't express weakness, you can't appear to be gross or creepy, especially for younger people, which is a good thing, right? Because the message of consent and boundaries was great. There's been a lot of effort, including in psychology, to raise awareness about this. sexual harassment at school, at work, this kind of thing, and date rape. We've put a lot of effort into it, and so the younger men have had at least exposure to that. And so there's some of that, but there's also this downside to that of they sometimes don't know how to navigate that very well. And so what they'll do with all of their energy for sex or for physical contact, which we all have, or for the most part, most of us have, that they will point their energy at men because they aren't being told that they can't, aside from the fact that they're having a lot of homophobia happening to them. But I hope am I making any sense? That here's the point, that you will have, and me and my friends were like this when we were in high school too, that when I look back, I didn't really know it at the time, I don't think, that you'll have young men that have a lot of energy, physical horniness, connection, physical warmth, just contact, and they will funnel it towards other guys, maybe because, they're also just wanting that physical contact, maybe because they're also bisexual or whatever. Maybe everyone is on some kind of a spectrum. But anyway, so they'll do that, particularly when they're intoxicated, particularly when they're uncomfortable and they're looking for comfort or something. So I don't know if that's what's happening with Joe. But I'll just throw that into the mix, that he's nervous, way more nervous than he is coming across, because he just seems like he's lighthearted. But that could be in part genuine. It could also be in part defense. I think there's a high likelihood that he is in need of a defense. I think he actually knows that he's in trouble with Madison. I can't know that. He's in trouble with Annie at the very least. She literally told him to step away from her. And so I think his way is to lean into it and try to appear like everything's fine, maybe to smooth things over, maybe to present himself like he's carefree so he can salvage his image or something. I don't know. But he's really, he seems like a little brother who really just wants to be a part of the crew. And he's just standing at one end of the bar, and he just keeps saying, Dark Nibbles and Tony, you're the hottest Russian I've ever seen, and he's just looking for, include me, which isn't like a crime, but I don't know, maybe it's neither here nor there, but I think it's not going to go over well with Madison.
5 minutes. Don't peg Anton. Don't peg me. Holy shit.
You're gonna peg Anton?
Let's be more careful with your pegging.
You're annoying me.
Am I?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So we can contrast that for Megan, as I've been saying, Megan and Jordan are handling it different than Joe and Madison. Madison just bounced, and I think might be pouting. I don't know, but there seemed to be some indication of that. Whereas Megan is just straight up just like, hey, this is annoying, right? Now, I don't know. If I were Megan, I would just be like, we're having fun, and these guys, this is how they like to be goofy. I'll either just shake my head or join in or leave. But to just say, hey, stop joking around with your friends, I don't know. You're in a mixer, and if they want to be that way, that I don't know. There's just certainly she can say, and she's being upfront and she's not being over the top. But so we can contrast the way Megan and Jordan are handling this as to Joe and Madison. Now, you could argue Joe's being a lot more annoying or this way, which is true, but Jordan certainly is in it as well. We can think about this for ourselves, jumping off point of whether you've been in Megan's shoes or in Jordan's shoes. How do you communicate about it, right? Because if you go to a party with your partner and they do something that's annoying you, when do you say it? How do you say it? If you hear something like that from your partner, how do you hear that? What do? You don't have to change, but it's feedback, right? And sometimes people are better at being able to see you that you can't see. But also, I have worked with clients who, at least it seemed to me through assessments and getting more information, because I'm not at the party in question, that the person, the Megans and the Madisons that I will see are unreasonable and are reacting out of their own traumas because they had an alcoholic dad who would humiliate them or something, So there's a lot of things to explore, is the point. But I will say no one's doing anything wrong. Joe is being goofy. Nothing wrong with that. You can be annoyed. I would be annoyed with it. There's a difference, and I don't know. I feel like I don't need to say this, but I guess maybe I do. That you can be annoyed with someone. Someone can be really annoying to you and not have a pathology, not have a psychopathology. They can be really socially bothersome to you, but there's nothing wrong with that person. They're just that way. We can all understand that, right? Now, could it indicate something that's wrong? I suppose, but I feel like with the two-edged sword, I'm terrible with idioms, when it comes to the psychology awareness, that we have a lot of awareness around this. So people today will think, okay, that person's annoying me. I wonder what psychological concept is at play. I wonder what's wrong with that person psychologically. I don't think you would have seen that 30 years ago as much, if at all. So it's good that people are aware of psychology. It's great, actually. People are going to therapy. They're talking about it openly, It's like a whole other world now than it was 30 years ago. But there's a downside, which is that whenever anyone's annoying you, it's just like, oh, they're a narcissist or they're neurodivergent or something, and it's just like, well, maybe, but sometimes people are just annoying or they're different or they're unrelatable or something.
And then we're like,
I am.
Oh, I'm sorry. We'll talk about it.
and then we're like,
What's annoying you?
Word.
I'll stop. I promise. That's all you gotta say.
Yeah. So Jordan is reacting, I think, well enough, given his goofiness, right? It's still there. It's not disappearing, but I think he's adjusting. He's pulling the reins up, and eye contact, face-to-face conversation. He even said, like, we'll talk about it later, because that would be a good idea. And I think they might have edited the more annoying bits. I'm getting the impression from Megan that the annoying bits between Jordan and Joe were happening for an extended period of time. Because the look on Megan's face is just like, what is wrong with you? And in the edit, I didn't see anything that was wrong. I just saw really dumb jokes, really, about being pegged and stuff. And I suppose the theme is that with Megan, she wouldn't normally go for someone like Jordan. And she wouldn't normally want to be in a long-term relationship with someone that was, she said that her normal guy is a lot older than her and really successful in business, really rich, And Jordan, the theme throughout this whole thing is Jordan is the opposite of that. And because he's a little younger than her, right? And certainly isn't rich. He's been explicit about that. She's 34 here and he's 29 here. So, yeah, that actually, I don't think I really recognize that. That is, it's neither here nor there. Listen to my deep dive on age differences in relationships. There's a lot of cultural silliness around that. But anyway, so this could be concerning to Megan of, well, this is why I usually didn't want to be with someone that was younger. And I'm looking for someone typically who is a stand-up, mature kind of person, and Jordan is not like that, and so Megan is concerned.
You got it. Easy peasy.
So it's like 3 hours
No,
later. He's waiting.
no.
Yeah.
Hey,
That's embarrassing.
I'm in trouble.
Yeah, so I think Megan and Jordan handled it well. She's communicating what she didn't like, but she's doing it with a smile and there's a lot of eye contact, but she's being firm. And he listened and was also trying to smooth things over in his way. Some of it wasn't working, some of it was. And then she is like, no, you need to understand, but she's not like angry or hostile. And then they seem to adjust. That's the way it looked anyway.
it's interesting seeing just like being out of the pods, right? Where it's how are we together? How is it physically? Like physically amazing.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, like.
What do you think?
Sorry, I was.
Okay, so this is in line with my worry that there's a dynamic building, at least, between Madison and Joe that is making Madison feel insecure. I think we have reason to believe that that might be happening. Madison, a little bit, because we've heard him talk in one-on-one interviews that she is not the sort of person that he would normally date. He talked about normally he would date thinner women. I think there's a chance that he is very attracted to Madison. There's a lot of indicators there. Just because someone says they usually date thinner women doesn't mean that you're not attracted to Madison, right? So anyway, but there's also a chance that there is something unfortunate happening between the two of them. But regardless of that, or in addition to that, I think Madison might come to the table with some insecurity that is independent of that, and it's all kind of being triggered. I don't know. And so right now it's pretty noticeable that Joe is pretty intoxicated. He is slurring his words. His eye movement is a little slow. He's slow to react. So this is really not the time to have a conversation about anything meaningful. And it's interesting to see the sequence. It was edited, so we can't really tell, but the way it was edited, Madison is talking to Anton saying, it's kind of interesting the way that we are coming together physically and how attraction is now that we're in person. And Anton's kind of like, huh? Yeah. I think Anton knows that there's something else going on. We'll rewind that. I don't know if I was reading that right. And then Madison turns to Joe and says, what do you think, right? I mean, isn't it kind of interesting? And Joe seems to be avoiding the question and very slowly turns, or he was literally distracted by something. But I think there's a chance that for Joe, up until this point, I think there's a few things happening. One, he's wasted. I think he's significantly. Two, I think he is reeling and maybe drinking more because of the tension that has already started happening between Madison and Joe. So one of the things that couples therapists think about and systems relational therapists think about is not looking at who's to blame, but how the mutual causality, how the circle of causality occurs. So we don't know, but one of the possibilities here to stretch systems thinking is actually really hard to do. I mean, I'll put it into simple terms right now, but I will teach my students for 3 years about systems. I mean, our whole thing in our program is about systems theory. We have a lot of other theories that we will talk about as well, but systems is sort of a through line. And yet I'll have really, really smart students in their final quarter, and they still only sort of get it. It's a really hard thing to do. So let me demonstrate. And it's really counter to the way that we typically think in our culture. It's more complicated. It's not necessarily correct, so to speak, but to have this as an option of seeing things definitely can help. So there's a possibility that they came to this party with him being a little unsure as to how attracted he is to her, being attracted enough, but maybe there's a little question there. And maybe a little bit of a disappointment or something when he saw her. Now, we don't know what that would have led to. I mean, maybe he would have absolutely learned or developed or something into 100 billion% attraction towards her. But in that moment, we could imagine that that was the case. I think he was we've seen various different levels of non-attraction that will occur in this phase. And he's definitely not on one at the sort of non-attraction side of the spectrum, because there's a lot of chemistry between the two of them. There's a lot of at least behavioral indicators that he is very attracted to her. So it's a nuanced thing there. And then she comes to the party with sensing a little bit of that, but feeling, okay. And she comes to the table with some insecurity from life. Now, that could come from a lot of places. Undoubtedly, she has internalized the ridiculous pressure of the American beauty standard, which all of us have been harmed by. It's getting worse and worse every decade. And it's with things like Ozempic and other kinds of things and other various different procedures that people can get, it's only getting worse. I can't imagine how horrible the beauty standard indoctrination and harm will be like in 10, 20, 30 years. Maybe things will turn around, hopefully, I don't know, but we're not going in the right direction. So undoubtedly, that's a factor, but there could be other factors as well. The way her family treated her, not only just around the beauty standard, but even just her sense of self-worth. She said, I want to quote her again, my dog is barking. She said, "I always feel like I'm not enough." That sounds to me like it's more than just attraction or attractiveness. That sounds to me like it's deeper than that. But I don't know. I mean, people can mean a lot of things by that. So she comes to the table with that. He probably comes to the table with something else, probably a dozen things, but I think some avoidance through goofiness is probably what he comes to the table with. I think that's possible. Okay, so they start off at the beginning of the party. Things are fine, but there's tension, alcohol, there's that tension that's happening. There's the tendencies that they both have where I think she might have a little tendency to get hurt and to be overly solicitous of reassurance from him. If she were to just go to him and say like, "Hey, I'm just feeling a little unattractive. Can you like remind me that I'm attractive?" or just regulate yourself or something like that. There's a lot of different ways to manage it. There's nothing wrong with feeling insecure, but how do you manage it? And, for the most part, there wasn't anything that she was doing that was untoward, but she wasn't being very direct. And I don't know how much she was aware of what was happening, but who knows? So she comes to the table with that. He comes to the table with a tendency to maybe drink too much and also a tendency to, under social tension, be overly goofy and annoyingly goofy. And so they both come to the table with that. And right away, there's like little bits, and I already reviewed some of those things right in the beginning. And as he's more goofy and less attentive to her, she becomes a little bit more worried, maybe about their relationship or about who he is or about her attractiveness. She came to him and talked about underboobs. She comes to, she's doing it again right now. And this is more intense than the underboob conversation. Now, maybe the underboob conversation had nothing to do with this dynamic. I can't know, but it aligns with this, right? That she's feeling something. And so she turns to him and asks him a question, hoping for a certain reassurance. He isn't receiving that because that's not what she's asking. And he doesn't intuit it or whatever, and so it doesn't, at the very least, help her and might actually kind of trigger her. And then she gets a little bit of a attitude with him, we don't know that, but it kind of looked, she walked away from him. Now, I want to check in with you, and as I'm going over this, we are linear thinkers, and reality TV audiences are very linear thinkers. We will choose one person that we will like and the other person we will not like. Actually, the typical kind of general audience response is that they hate everyone. Maybe there's one or two people that they worship, like idealize completely. They can do no wrong, but pretty much everyone else they hate. I wouldn't doubt, I did survey a lot of y'all that I'll go over at some point, and I wouldn't doubt if both of these people don't like, but I don't know. But the linearness comes in of one person they dislike less. So if you dislike her, more than him or less than him, right? If you like her a little bit more than him, then you're going to think, well, of course she reacted weird because he is weird. He's ick. Okay, yeah, that's a valuable perspective. We can look at linear options. There are some times where one person is just to blame and the other person is just reacting and doing their best. But with systems thinkers, it's almost always the case that it's helpful to look at these circular causalities. So what that forces us to do is to imagine both sides as being at least kind of reasonable, not like something we would endorse or recommend, but it's understandable when we understand how they were processing things, when we really are in their shoes. We have a problem with empathy anyway. We have a problem with not like we're psychopaths, but there's empathetic barriers in life, particularly with people you don't really know or have a connection with. But reality TV doesn't encourage it. The edit doesn't really encourage it. Plus, they're strangers, and if they remind us of someone that we don't like, it's going to bother us. So we can imagine that as she's being a little bit more insecure and he's being a little bit more distancing or hostile / jokey or avoidant, maybe that's a better way of putting it, is he is uncomfortable. He senses a vibe from her and he just says, fuck, I'm just going to hang out with Jordan and his dark nipples, and I'm going to drink, and I'm just going to joke around and maybe even prove to her that you can have a good time. I don't know. There's just a lot of guesses. There's probably things that I'm saying that are in the ballpark, or at least of that ilk or something, because it's often the case. It's usually there's usually a lot of things happening for each person. And this is his typical way of managing it. It makes her even more hurt because he's not paying attention to her, or he's drinking too much or something. And there's also a concern about how this might look, and she feels insufficient. There's always comparison happening among these couples. They're always saying, look at that couple, they look so nice, and what's wrong with us? It's natural, it's not healthy, because comparison is not helpful. And plus, you don't know what's really happening with those other couples. Anyway, so we can imagine that she gets more concern, more distance, more rolling eyes. He gets more goofy, more drunk, more hurt, more angry at her, and we're seeing that happen. Then we check in with them on the edit, and the sun looks like it's actually setting given the shadows. So this could be like 6 hours or a few hours, and he could be, tired and pretty hammered. And then she is, I think, either trying to work something out, she's still concerned about that insecurity. Because if we just saw this scene and I didn't know he was drunk or something, I would find this question to be kind of odd. In a party that she would be talking to Anton about, like, something that is something you can talk about for sure, but not in a social situation with a lot of people. And it's something that they've already been talking about. Madison and Joe have explicitly talked at length about this experience that they had upon seeing each other in the hallway, and how it was an overwhelming experience. It was just like, because he keeps saying, yeah, it was shocking to see you. Not that you're disgusting, I'm putting word. He's like, you're beautiful, I'm attracted to you. But it was just hard to match up the voice. And because she's getting a vibe, and because I think it's real, but also because she comes to the table with insecurity, it's really triggering her. Now, she's been handling it fairly well. She just keeps asking questions and wanting reassurance. And he's been giving it, the previous night when they were in the hot tub in the pool and they had sex last night. So it's like, they were managing it. But now there's additional factors. There's the drinking, there's the friends, there's the distractions. Anyway, there's Jordan's dark nipples, for example. And so she comes over, and I could argue on the scale of things is functional. If I were Birdie on her shoulder, I'd be like, wait for him to sober up and then have this conversation, and also maybe check in with yourself about what exactly you're seeking. You're probably seeking something very valid, but unless you know what that is, then you're just going to forge ahead without knowing what you're after, and you might not get it. And I would guess that she wouldn't. So I'm guessing fundamentally she's wanting to know how secure she is in this relationship, but she can't. There's no way to gather that information. Even if he was 100% perfect and everything, which he's not, you still wouldn't know. It's inherently insecure. It's inherently uncertain. And so just being able to deal with that. Now, there's some uncertainty or some concern that you can address, but the foundational thing of, is he attracted to you really? Is he attracted to you enough? Only time will tell. He might not even know. And in no likelihood he wouldn't, right? Anyway, So let's rewind this and let's keep this all in mind in terms of the context, in terms of, I'm just speculating as to what's in their hearts and mind, and also what has happened up until this point over several hours that we're just seeing little snippets. And so if we just imagine it's something in that ballpark. All right, well, that does it for that episode. Tune in next time when I continue watching. And everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.